we're pretty much going to talk about the NWHL draft and how who got picked, what it'll add to each team, and it's a recent thing that happened, and we're scraping by to get any type of hockey news right now, so it's a good time to have a draft happen as well. But the NWHL also kind of like, they kind of added to the PR side to it by having notorious people of some sort, like whether it was announcers or coaches, like they had those guys announce the guys or girls announce the draft picks, so that was all cool. But I guess we can start off with saying a few words about what the drafts used to be like between like the NWHL and the CWHL. And well, like the NWHL kind of started off like it didn't seem like it was a legitimate draft the first couple of years, because they would just kind of like draft players, like big name players, and then say, oh yeah, we drafted this person, and it seemed like it was kind of a PR thing, which looking back, I mean, I kind of think all the drafts are kind of like a PR thing, because like generally, no matter what, teams are gonna normally draft players that are if a player's like from the Minnesota area or lives in the Minnesota area, then the team's gonna, like, Minnesota's gonna draft that player, or same goes for Boston or Montreal or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing about PR is, I actually became a fan of the NWHL because the first time I heard about the NWHL was when Alex Carpenter went first overall to the New York Riveters, and I was like, oh man, there's a new league that pays players. Like, oh, that's interesting. And I think at the time the draft didn't mean much. Like I said, they just kind of picked whoever the big name players were, and that was that. But as time went on, I think after the first couple of years, they finally made it to where players are like actually like registering for the draft, so to speak. So that makes it a little more legitimate. And then the players might make a tweet or say something about being drafted by the team. And then the CWHL, like every player who played in the CWHL pretty much had to register for the draft, which I always thought was kind of different, but that's just the way they did it. You could almost look at all of it now as meaningless, like between the CWHL and the NWHL, because of, like I said, players have to be drafted or tend to be drafted by wherever their location is, wherever they live, their geographical location. So I feel like the draft is kind of always a good, like, it's kind of like more for a PR, kind of more for PR purposes anyway, which is fine. Nothing wrong with PR because it gets people interested. And, what the NWHL did this year was they had all kinds of different people announce draft picks, like Kenny Albert, the announcer, or even an NHL player like Ryan McDonough announced a draft pick for a fellow Wisconsin alum. They had Florence Schilling announce a draft pick, and then, just kind of stuff like that. So, hey, that keeps it interesting. And I think the NWHL players did the same thing for the WNBA draft. I didn't quite follow that one, but I think something similar happened with that. So yeah, but players from different leagues, whether guy players, girl players, they would just announce somebody would announce a pick, and you wouldn't know who it was until you saw the announcement. So that was fun. So Boston Pride picked first after they traded picks with the Toronto team. So apparently it worked out well for both teams, they were saying. So Digit Murphy was all happy about the trade herself on Toronto's end, and for Boston, they got to pick first, so they picked Sammy Davis from BU. So not surprisingly, a BU player would go to the Boston Pride. I mean, otherwise you might maybe Connecticut Whale, but it's usually just going to be Boston. So what do we know about Sammy Davis? Like, did you ever go to any BU games, or did you follow any of the college teams?
I didn't really follow the BU women's team too much. I mean, I know Sammy Davis just recently came back from a hip injury that she incurred last year. She definitely had a bounce back year. I mean, she's a local girl. She's from Pembroke, Massachusetts. She had a pretty solid year. She had like 17 goals and 24 assists, and she was the captain of the team. Honestly, I wasn't really surprised that the Pride selected her. Just selected a hometown girl. They signed a forward. They officially signed her a couple days ago. So yeah, I mean, it was not exactly a surprise that the Pride selected her. A good choice. It was a no-brainer on their part.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I actually didn't know about the hip surgery thing, but I saw another player posting about how she has hip surgery. It was a player from Ohio State, Sarah Sikkonen. She was Finnish player. She wasn't on the World's team last year, but she was on the Olympic team the year before. So, yeah, I've heard about other players like NHL players and whoever getting hip surgeries, and I guess it kind of made me think like I don't know if I would liken it to like a baseball pitcher getting Tommy John, but I mean I can see why in hockey you would have to get it kind of makes sense to me that you might have to get a hip surgery at one point, but I guess hopefully it doesn't have to happen too. But yeah, so that's always interesting when a player bounces back from something like that. You know, that's always a good. I mean, if you're talking about draft scouts who look for everything, you know, they look for all these little things to say, oh, this makes the player more draftable. You know, seeing a player bounce back like that, that's always a good thing. But, you know, I don't know how much I can go by draft scouts. Because I'm pretty sure, like, as far as the NHL players, they said, like, players who play Fortnite a lot, that was like a bad character thing, so they'd get knocked down in the draft or something. So I don't know. But
who determines that? Like how old are these scouts and determine? That's so arbitrary.
I just don't know. Like I don't know who comes up with it, or you know, it's probably just like I don't know. I think just whoever isn't part of the scouting for whatever given team, it's just like they have to put something on the report, so it's like they can put that on there. I don't know. I don't know how it all unfolds, but that's just like that's getting a little bit tedious now. You know, I mean, I guess video games can be a waste of time, I guess, but I don't know if it's unless it's good for the mind. I have no idea, but yeah.
So is that the NHL's equivalent of the Wonderlic test that is administered by like NFL scouts? Like, oh, they fail this criteria, this litmus test. Like, oh, they're not. It's a character issue. So if they play with, I've never played Fortnite before, but I just think that just sounds. Yeah. I don't know. That just sounds very petty. I don't know. I mean, like, okay, so a player has an outside hobby when they're not on the ice. I mean, I don't see as long as it doesn't affect them, as long as it doesn't get in the way of their ability to show up to practice or play, I don't see that being an issue. But I don't know. Like, to me, I don't know how old these scouts are, but I don't want to be ageist, but it sounds like these guys are in their 60s who are saying stuff like that.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know, like, yeah, I don't know, like, I mean, that's the NHL too. I mean, I guess since we're talking about the NWHL, it's not going to be that intensive scouting at this point, but, you know, it's just still kind of fun. At least this Sammy Davis thing, the hip surgery, that's a positive thing. You know, that really is a thing that would affect her or not. And if she came back from the hip surgery and played well, that's a good persevering thing. So, you know, you can check that as a good thing, and, you know, as a good draft scouting thing, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, but anyway, so then we go to the Connecticut Whale, and this is interesting. They for the second pick, they drafted Kayla Friesen from Clarkson, and she's another one of those players that transferred to Clarkson from somewhere else. So it's like she came from St. Cloud State, I think. How many other players transferred to Clarkson from elsewhere? You know, Katrin Lonergan, she transferred from Boston College, and Amanda Zeglin came from Ohio State. So yeah, it's interesting. You kind of wonder, it's almost like you wonder if like a person from Clarkson can bring like Clarkson's winning flair to a team like the Whale, who's been struggling with winning. You know, but yeah, it seems like players jump at the chance to play at Clarkson, and I guess if you play for Clarkson, it's probably a good thing because Clarkson always wins at something, whether it's the championship or the Patty Kaz or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they well, obviously the women's Frozen Four it was canceled due to the global pandemic. But yeah, if I recall correctly, Clarkson won the national title last year, right? Or no, 2 years ago. They won it 2 years ago, and then last year Wisconsin won it.
Right.
So yeah, you know, Clarkson is a perennial powerhouse or a perennial contender. They're always going to be in the top 10 on any type of like NCAA women's polls. Honestly, yeah, I see it as a good pick for the Connecticut Whale. I mean, they finished 5th, dead last in the NWHL last season. They were a -61 in goal differential. Yeah, they need as much offensive firepower as they can get. And, you know, Kayla Friesen is definitely a good choice. I mean, just looking at her stats, like during the 2019-2020 season, she had 10 goals and 20 assists. So I think she's got a balanced scoring attack. She can only help the team. I mean, like the Connecticut Whale, unfortunately, in the past few seasons, the last few seasons of their existence, they haven't really done much. I don't think they've even finished in the top 3. They've always finished in the bottom. They've always been bottom dwellers. So anything will help them, I guess.
Definitely, and yeah, I think Clarkson. I think they were set to face Wisconsin in the game that happened before the Frozen Four, before everything got canceled. So Clarkson was still in a good position. I don't know how they would have done against Wisconsin, but Clarkson, they've always like found a way to like win all their games by like a goal, like no matter what the team was. So like, I don't know, they always find a way. But yeah, so good get by the Whale. I hope. Well, we'll see what happens with that pick. We'll see if she ends up signing with the Whale, because again, the Whale could use all the firepower they need. And the Whales did sign players like mid-season last year, and they ended up beating the Buttes in like the quarterfinal playoff game, or the playoff game for like the worst two teams or whatever, like with the worst records. So yeah, if they can find a way, then they ought to be finding a way. But anyway, so for the third pick, it was the Buffalo Buttes, and they picked the goalie Carly Jackson from Maine. And Maine's another team I got to start like following more. But yeah, I mean, part of me isn't surprised, because the Buttes had a lot of goalies last year, but they had one of those goalies was Maria Fujimagari, who's from Ontario, and I kept thinking like, there's like a lot of Ontario players. Me and Ray talked about this, how I think there was like 6 or 7 Ontario players on the Buttes, and I kept wondering which ones will just go back and play for the Toronto team if they can. And Maria Fujimagari, being from like Ontario, I don't know if it's the Toronto area, but she's from Ontario, and they must know something. They must think maybe she won't come back and go to Ontario. That's just one example, but the other 2 goalies they had were Tiffany Sue and I'm blanking on the other one. Kelsey Newman. And Kelsey Newman always tries to play for the Buttes when she can. She didn't play for the Buttes that one year where you had Nicole Hensley and Shannon Zavados and all that, but every other year she's pretty much has. So yeah, they drafted Carly Jackson for some reason, and the Buttes wanted a goalie right away, so they got their goalie, it looks like.
Yeah, I'd say goaltending was definitely a glaring need for the Buttes. So they had like a depth of 4 goaltenders last year. Obviously, the primary goaltenders, well, they kind of shuffled back and forth between Kelsey Newman and Mariah Fujimagari. Neither Newman nor Fujimagari had like stellar stats. I think both their combined save percentages were each under 90%, and they obviously the Buttes finished 4th in the NWHL standings last season. They were a -45 in goal differential, so I think they gave up the second most goals allowed. They gave up 116 goals last season. That's a lot. So when they just look at Carly Jackson's stats, star player from Maine, she had like a 1.40 goals against average and a 93.4 saves percentage. I mean, so yeah, it's definitely an upgrade. Yeah, maybe they see something that we don't know. Like maybe they don't know if neither Newman nor Fujimagari are going to sign back, so they just needed an insurance policy and they need an upgrade in that position. So yeah, it's a no-brainer. My hat's off to the Buttes. They addressed one glaring need that they needed for that position. So I have no qualms about them selecting Carly Jackson 3rd overall.
Yeah, for sure. And and I didn't get to watch as many games as I wanted to last year with all my freelance work happening on the weekends. So it's like that escaped me, their stats with the goalies. My first thing was just to go to which players were from Ontario and who's going to jump to the new Toronto team. But if we assume that Carly Jackson is the starting goalie, then that would work too. Whatever tandem works, how the NHL is all about tandems now. So a league with less teams like the NWHL, you would think it should definitely be about tandems. So then for the 4th pick, the Metropolitan Riveters picked Soroya Tinker. And Yale is another team I got to try to follow more. I've always heard about Yale, and usually I think somebody said something about like Yale is not like as well known of a team, but they can get some really good players can come out of Yale. So Soroya Tinker is going to the Riveters, and
well, yeah, she's a defenseman. She just her overall stats from last season during the 2019 and 2020 season is she had like 1 goal and 11 assists. I heard she's a solid defenseman. It's something the Rivers desperately needed. I mean, Rivers finished 3rd, but they gave up a staggering 299 goals. You know, that's quite a bit. That's a huge jump from the Whale gave 116 to them giving up. Yeah, they finished third overall, but I don't know. But 299 goals, like given up. I mean, in European, that's a lot for a 16-game regular season.
Right.
So they'll need all the defensive help that they can get. So I'm glad they're addressing one glaring weakness right there. So hope for better things for the Metropolitan Rivers.
For sure. Minnesota, with the next pick, they picked Alex Woken. And I was actually listening to, I think you watched a little bit of it too. I was watching Erica Ayala's little Instagram live thing, and they were talking about how the Whitecaps defensemen are, the Whitecaps defenders are getting older, so, but they still went with a forward for this pick, you know, and Alex Woken is a forward. And I know who Alex Woken is because that's my favorite Gopher player. So she's been to U.S. national team camps before. I don't think she's made the team, but yeah, good, one of those good Minnesota Gopher players. And my question is, will she actually play for the Whitecaps, or is she going to go overseas? Because I think I read an interview at some point this past season. I read some kind of interview where she talked about having interest of going overseas to the SDHL. And like, as far as like registering for the NWHL draft, I figured if you apply for this draft, then you're probably not going to play for the PWHPA, because otherwise you would just go to the PWHPA. But as far as like playing for a pro league somewhere, you know, you're going to enter whatever draft you can to keep your options open. So, I mean, Alex Woken entering this draft, it's a good, Minnesota Whitecaps are obviously a good option for her. She's from Fargo, North Dakota, and she played at Minnesota. So, but keeping the SDHL would be a good option for her as well. So, as far as I know, I mean, we all know it's a good pick for the Whitecaps, but I wonder if she stays or not. That's pretty much my only question, if she actually plays for the Whitecaps.
That's anyone's guess. I can't say for sure. I mean,
right.
I'm not exactly sure what's in her mind frame right now, but if she does sign with the Whitecaps, the strong keeps getting stronger. You know, the Whitecaps finished second overall, not by very much behind the Pride, second overall behind the Boston Pride. But, you know, in Alex, they get a good solid player from a Minnesota powerhouse team. You know, she had a balanced scoring attack. She had 16 goals and 16 assists last year. So it's a pretty solid stats right there. I mean, if she does, you know, sign the Whitecaps, they get a solid player. You know, I see nothing but good things for the Whitecaps. I mean, this is their second. They're approaching their third overall year in the NWHL, and they're doing well. They won the Isabel Cup their first year 2 seasons ago. Last season, they made it all the way to the Isabel Cup final against the Pride, but they haven't played it, obviously, due to the global pandemic. But yeah, they're constantly on the upswing. I don't see them, like, you know, falling flat on their faces anytime soon. They have a solid franchise there.
Definitely. So yeah, either way, they do have a solid franchise. And as far as the mystery of whether players are going to the SDHL or not, for the next draft pick, we did have that answered. So Toronto, they picked J.C. Gebhard from RMU, and I do kind of know about RMU because they're in the CHA, but we already know that J.C. did. We know she's going to sign with the SDHL, and she's going to sign with my favorite team there, the Brinas IF club. You know, with Katarzyna Mrazova, Denisa Kritsova, Lara Stalder. They got a lot of like Olympic players from national team players from different teams there. The Brinas team, they had such a good team, and they lost to Lolia because Lolia has all the Finnish stars and all that stuff. So you kind of wonder, like, oh man, if they're going to add J.C. Gebhard, that could be, you know, a player like that from North America. Then we'll see how that team fares after that. I know that Brinas team, they had Melissa Samoskevich for a while, but then she apparently couldn't adjust to life over in Sweden, which usually you think, you know, players, although they have the time of their lives when they're living in another country like that, but I guess for some people it just doesn't always work out. So Samo, she left the team and came back and played for the PWHPA. But as far as J.C. Gebhard, you kind of just wonder, like, will she sign with Toronto eventually, or is she just gonna? I guess that's anybody's guess, because, you know, we know she's playing for SDHL next season, so.
Well, if she does ultimately decide to play for the Toronto franchise, you know, she's a great player to build a franchise around. You know, last season offensive juggernaut, 20 goals and 43 assists. I'd say she had a pretty solid season last year. So if she does sign with Toronto, that's a nice little centerpiece that they have there. You know, good foundation for a franchise to build upon.
For sure. But yeah, just so it'll beg the question for everybody else who is drafted that hasn't signed yet. It's like, will they stay here or will they play in the SDHL? And again, Alex Woken, that interview that I read about her, that got me thinking some players are definitely going to sign with the SDHL. It's just a matter of who. And we got our first one with JC Gebhardt. So yeah. So then that takes us to round 2, and the CT Whale, the Connecticut Whale, they drafted Victoria Howran. And again, she's a UNH player. So a lot of the University of New Hampshire is definitely a team I got to start following more, because a lot of UNH players got drafted in the NWHL. So, and that's the cool thing about the NWHL. It can get you more interested in stuff like that. You just never know. But I do know one thing. I think it was just today they signed Victoria Howran. The Whale did. So we know she's going to be playing for the Whale, and she's a defender. So do you see the Whale benefiting from this? As in, like, did they maybe have holes on defense last year that this helps plug or anything like that?
Well, they'll need all the help they can get. So I don't see this being a bad pick at all. You know, like I said, the Connecticut Whale, they had a lot of defensive lapses last season, a lot of turnovers, gave up a lot of power play goals. So yeah, Victoria Howard, that'd be a nice upgrade. Like, you get some good hockey's representation from her since she played for UNH. She had 2 goals, 20 assists. From what I see, she's a solid defenseman. So good pick.
Indeed. Yeah, let's hope the Whale finds some success with all these picks too. So then the Toronto team got to pick second in the second round. So they picked Amy Curlew from Cornell. And as far as I know, like, Cornell had a monster season this year. They were pretty much in first place the whole year. And the only team they lost to was the team I wanted to win the Frozen Four, which was Ohio State. And of course, none of us got to see that happen. But Cornell, yeah, they were kind of one of those teams that kind of ruined my dream of the matchups I wanted in the Frozen Four, because I wanted to see, like, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Northeastern, and Ohio State. Those were my 4 dream teams. But, you know, Cornell was going to they were definitely going to get one of those spots no matter what. But, well, it seems like they would. So, but that's, to the extent I know about Cornell, is that they were a very good team. So do you know much about Amy Curlew's stats? Was she one of the higher scorers on the team or anything like that?
So yeah, she's a forward. She got 9 goals and 13 assists last season. So they were modest numbers, nothing off the charts, but they're solid. Gotcha. But yeah, good Ivy League player. Nice representation. If she signs with Toronto, another centerpiece to focus on, being like a building block for that new infant franchise. So yeah, we'll see what happens with the Toronto franchise. Let's see what Digit Murphy does to build that team going forward.
Yeah, and you would kind of hope, like, more players keep signing with that team so they can just kind of be good right away. I mean, you would think, like, you know, hockey, like with Canada, Toronto being hockey crazy, it's like you definitely think more people would want to sign there. It's like, it's just another good option to play hockey. So next up was the Buffalo Beauts drafted Cody Cross from Northeastern, and this is another one of those cases where we saw Buffalo like try to draft somebody from Boston, like, or somebody that played with a Boston area team. Like, I know last year they drafted Megan Keller, but that was before the PWHPA came around. So, but it's interesting, like, you know, because when you think of Northeastern, Boston College, or BU, Harvard, or whatever, like, you think like they're all just going to be drafted by the Boston Pride, but then you see somebody get, you know, like a Northeastern player like Cody Cross get drafted by Buffalo. So you kind of would hope that would work out if she signs there. But Cody Cross is a defenseman, and Northeastern definitely was having a great season this year. So what might she be able to bring to this Buttes team that they were missing last year? And I know you said, you were talking about goalies, right? Goalies were letting goals in. So obviously it also helps to have defensemen, right? You know, whatever good defenseman they can get.
Yeah, you know, last season, obviously the Buffalo Beauts had a drastic drop-off. I mean, like, you know, they finished 4th in the NWHL. I mean, the year before that, they made all the way to the Isabel Cup final with Shan Sabados, against the Whitecaps, but obviously you know how that ended. So they'll need all the upgrades they can get. So they obviously, naturally, they selected a defenseman. Cody Cross had like 4 goals and 12 assists with Northeastern, and Northeastern's proven to be a perennial powerhouse. So they saw something in her that not many other people saw. So obviously they drafted a defenseman. They trying to shore up some holes that they had in the defensive side of things. So they're just going to be focusing on the defensive side of things thus far. They're not really trying to select offensive powerhouses right now because, you know, like I said, Beavs finished 4th last year. The goal differential of minus 45, 116 goals against last year. So they need to fix something. So
yeah, so that definitely makes sense that they would pick a defenseman. And yeah, they made it to the Isabel Cup final 4 years in a row. So like, it's like the Buffalo Bills aren't the only pro team that's made it 4 years in a row, like to a championship final anymore. So yeah, so then Boston Pride. This time it is the Boston Pride drafting somebody from Boston. It's Boston College. It is Delaney Belinskas, and she is. I got to write on PDF, so I keep accidentally scratching over everything. She's a forward. So, did you follow the Boston College team much this year? I know they had a rough thing where like Daryl Watts went to Wisconsin and Katrin Lonergan went to Clarkson. So like players were kind of leaving the team, but did this Delaney Belinskas player, did she stand out in any way this year for Boston College?
Yeah, she was one of their top goal scorers. Like you said, the departures of Daryl Watts and Katrin Lonergan didn't certainly help their cause. Like, a lot of upperclassmen left. She scored 20 goals and 6 assists. She seems like a dependable scorer. It made sense that the Boston Pride signed her. I mean, the Pride just keep getting better. I mean, they had the highest goal differential last season. I don't know what it was. I think it was like plus 100, something ridiculous like that. Yeah. They just had like a sensational year last year, but obviously they didn't get to cap it off with the Isabel Cup game. So it made sense that they drafted another forward. I mean, they don't have any defensive glaring needs that I know of. So logical choice.
So then the Minnesota Whitecaps picked Patty Marshall, who's a defender. So they did pick the defender that time. And again, Minnesota is a powerhouse team. And I remember Patty Marshall was a player I remember since she was a freshman because the Frozen Four was in Minnesota, was in St. Louis. So anybody that was at that Frozen Four, I kind of recognized. So yeah, if the Minnesota Whitecaps were aging, well, they got their young defenseman now, and I don't think she's signed yet, but what would Patty Marshall just bring to that team? I mean, we kind of really touched on this, right? It's like the Whitecaps were already a powerhouse team, and now this makes them pretty much more of a powerhouse, right?
Yeah, it's just Patty Marshall's a good defenseman. Last season, she had a modest stats. She had a goal and 9 assists, and she's a local girl. She doesn't have to travel too far. It makes sense that they're drafting good players who are around the geographical area. So, yeah, the Whitecaps can't really do any wrong. I mean, they don't really have any glaring needs that I see.
Yeah, because I mean, you had if they still do this year's Isabel Cup, if they manage to make that happen, you got the Whitecaps versus the Pride this year. It's almost hard to imagine it won't be the same thing next year if these players actually all sign with the Pride and the Whitecaps. So we'll just have to see how it goes down. But we'll see if all the other teams will make any kind of big surprise signings and keep up with these two teams. Because man, and speaking of Boston and Minnesota, like the next pick is a Boston Pride pick as well. It's Teresa Vanisova, a forward from Maine, and finally we see another European player in the draft, or the first one for this year. But the Boston Pride had even with the European player, the Boston Pride had like Lavisa Savalander. She was in goal for the Pride this year, and we saw her at Worlds last year, but we didn't see her play. But if you went to Boston Pride games, then you definitely saw her play then. So I mean, it seems like even if it's a European player, like it seems like I have a good faith that they'll probably sign that player. So it's like, and we can guess that Teresa Vanisova being a Czech team national player, we can pretty much guess she's going to bring something good to the Boston Pride.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that draft pick. Like you said, she's a strong forward from Maine, Czech Republic girl. She had an amazing year last season during the 2019-2020 season. She had like 14 goals and 17 assists. So
Yeah.
she's just bringing nothing but firepower to that team. So yeah, I'm very excited about that pick.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always the SDHL for Teresa too, because like her friends Katachina and Denisa play over in the SDHL. But I don't know. I do really want to see like European players, like some European players, play in the NWHL. It's like the PWHPA has a lot of good players. The SDHL has a lot of good players, but I want to see the NWHL still have a lot of good players as well. It's just kind of like you never know what's going to happen. But we shall see in the coming weeks. I don't think, as far as my signing list, she hasn't signed with the Boston Pride. So, but we'll see what happens. And I just, again, like more having European players would be interesting. So moving on with the next round 3. So the Connecticut Whale picks Savannah Rennie, a forward from Syracuse, which means if it's Syracuse, I probably saw her play this year because that's another CHA rival of Lindenwood. So I did see a couple Syracuse games that year, and I can't say much from my firsthand experience because Lindenwood's goalies were all suspended and they had a skater playing in goal. So like pretty much everybody had a chance to score that game. But did you see anything about her stats that might bring anything good to the Whale? I mean, and obviously, yeah.
Her stats, I would not say blew my mind, but she had okay modest stats. She had 8 goals and 15 assists last season for Syracuse.
They do have a lot of Ontario players, but I didn't follow them much outside of that Lindenwood game, and a lot of people got to score in that game. But usually, like Mercyhurst and RMU, usually they'll have the big star players come out of the CHA. So, again, Syracuse being in Lindenwood's division, I definitely got to pay attention to them more. But again, like the Whale, who knows? Like you never know what kind of different opportunity they're going to have with a team like an NWHL team. You just never know. Like that Kendra Broad, she was a Lindenwood player, and she ended up scoring like the first game-winning goal for the Whale the whole season. So that's you never know. You never know what they might do with the opportunity. So we'll see what happens with that. So then the next couple picks of the third round, they actually consist of players from the U Sports program, which is basically just Canada. Like if it's not NCAA in America, it's going to be U Sports in Canada, I guess. So what might we know about the Autumn McDougall player from University of Alberta, which I believe Alberta is the Pandas.
Yep.
If I remember right, it's she's a forward. Did she put up any good numbers for the as far as U Sports, the U Sports League is concerned?
Yeah, she was pretty solid. Very balanced scoring attack. 17 goals and 14 assists last year.
Toronto also picked a U Sports player, and that definitely makes sense. It's Erin Locke. She's a forward from York University. So I can definitely understand the Toronto team picking U Sports players because
I don't know. I don't know much about the person. I'm just going by pure stats. Last season, she scored 6 digits in points. She had 3 goals and 6 assists. I don't know the whole story there. I didn't look at the full stats. I'm not sure if she played a full season or if there weren't ample opportunities for her to score. I don't know. It's not for me to say. I don't want to just judge a book by its cover. I honestly don't know much about Erin Locke.
And that's the thing. Like, it's hard to just kind of look at statistics, and then we're not really going to know much about a lot of these players as far as what the little things they do, or anything like that. But at the end of the day, it does make sense that the Toronto team would pick, U Sports players. It was a matter of time. Up until this point, it was all NCAA players pretty much. But yeah, you get like eventually the U Sports players are going to come in, and of course, like Toronto and Buffalo picking U Sports players. Those are the 2 teams I would expect to pick U Sports players. I don't know about the Minnesota Whitecaps because you got 5 D1 teams in Minnesota, and then they're going to try to pick Wisconsin players too. So as far as teams who pick U Sports players, I'm going to look to Buffalo and Toronto for that. But then so here comes the goalie picked by the Metropolitan Riveters. They picked Tara Hoffman from Yale University, and she's got an interesting spelling for her last name, Hoffman, because usually it's 2 F's and 1 N, but in her last name, it's 1 F and 2 N's. It's not like an important piece of information, but I thought it was interesting. But yeah, did Tara Hoffman put up some good numbers at Yale, I'm guessing? Maybe.
Not quite as good as Carly Jackson, but because Carly Jackson was already selected, so just looking at Tara Hoffman's stats, like you said, another Yale player, 2.29 goals against average and a .891 save percentage. I mean, it's okay. I mean, not quite Carly Jackson, but hey, you can only pick what's available on the draft board, and
yeah.
Well, the Riveters, if they say beggars can't be choosers. I mean, they gave up 299 goals last season, so anything is an upgrade for them. So, I mean, yeah, I'm just surprised that they still finished third in the NWHL last season with as many goals as they've given up last season.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like we talked about, like the Beach were giving up a lot of goals too, and then the Whale always kind of goes through. They kind of have woeful seasons usually, but yeah, I mean. The one goalie I recognized from previous seasons for the Rivs, they had Sam Walter, who used to play for the Whale, and I think Sam Walter got injured or something. And then I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about Dana Di Martino and Zoe Sissis, so in wake of the Olympians leaving. So there's players that can step up in this league and make stuff happen. And that's kind of the positive I wanted to see with the PWHPA stuff going on. I wanted to see, like, who might step up and play like they've never played before, It's like, and you might still put an asterisk by it because the Olympians and all that aren't there, but you still want to see like what positives can come out of this, who's going to take advantage of the opportunity while they have it, and maybe this Riveters goalie, this new, Tara Hoffman, she might take advantage of that. We shall see what happens. But anyway, as far as the next pick, Minnesota Whitecaps picked Presley Norby, and I've always found it's always fun to see Minnesota pick a Wisconsin player. So far, it hasn't panned out just yet. I know Presley Norby, well, last season they picked Sophia Shaver, and that would have made sense because the St. Louis guy she's dating plays for the Minnesota Wild, so that would have made sense for her. But then the PWHPA was formed, so obviously that didn't happen. And then Presley Norby, she made a tweet that said something like, I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I'm going to go get the grad school. I can't remember what she was doing grad school in, but she's basically just going back to grad school, so in the fall. So I'm guessing she's not going to be playing for the Badgers. I mean, for the Whitecaps, right away. But yeah, it just makes you think: could she end up signing with the Whitecaps if she finishes her grad school thing? Could she end up signing eventually? I mean, she did. She must have been the one to register for the draft, I guess. So she probably just wanted to keep her options open, I guess.
Yeah, I see nothing wrong with that, but like if she does ultimately eventually play for the Whitecaps, she's a solid player. 10 goals and 11 assists last season. I was pretty excited about that draft pick.
Yeah, and I mean, again, if they were going to play for the PWHPA, then they would have just they would have just done that. They wouldn't have entered the NWHL draft. So I'm guessing the NWHL draft for people that enter it, if they don't sign, they're just keeping their options open for now. But so yeah, the idea of like Minnesota Gophers and Whitecaps playing on the same team, or Minnesota Gophers and Wisconsin Badgers playing on the same team sounds fun. I mean, obviously like Team USA and Team Canada, you'll get Gophers and Badgers playing with each other, but like I don't know, for whatever reason it's just fun. For whatever reason it's fun to think about. So we'll see if she eventually plays for them, or but either way the Whitecaps are going to be a powerhouse team still. So we'll see. I think I'm ending every pick with "we'll see what happens," and I'm trying to cut that habit, but it's hard. But yeah. So anyway, moving on to the next pick. It's another UNH player, and again, I keep telling myself I gotta follow New Hampshire more. But Boston Pride picked Taylor Winchowski, the forward from UNH. So did she do you know if Taylor put up any good numbers for UNH, and is she going to add much to the Pride? Or I mean, hell, the Pride are drafting a lot of good players, so it's like, would she be a good part of that depth at least?
I guess she could add depth. I mean, her numbers aren't quite as good as the prior picks. She had like 7 goals and 14 assists last season for the team. I mean, that's kind of hard to follow. I mean, like she got drafted after Sammy Davis, Delaney Belinskis, and Teresa Vanasola. I mean, that's hard company to follow. So, yeah. I mean,
But
I mean, it doesn't hurt to add her. I mean, she seems like a solid player. She comes from a strong program, but when you're following the likes of Davis Belinskas and Vanisova, it's like it's really the pressure is going to start to mount.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how it all could work. Like, she could just end up being like a depth player, and then she could have success that way. I mean, so then that takes us to round 4, and the Connecticut Whale drafted Amanda Conway, a forward from Norwich University, and obviously the Charlie Conway jokes are going to come out with that one. Everybody's going to be like, "Oh, I hope she wears 96 or whatever," and I can't imagine that. I wonder how she lives with that. She probably. I would think if you had the last name Conway as a hockey player, you'd probably just embrace it and be like, oh, yeah, But before I go on with the Mighty Ducks references, is Amanda Conway going to bring anything to the Whale that we know of?
It's kind of fitting that you mentioned about the Charlie Conway reference. I mean, well, she certainly has his scoring prowess. I mean, she scored 32 goals and 27 assists last season.
Wow. I'm trying to remember if Norwich was an NCAA team or if it was a U Sports team. Is Norwich? Are they in North?
I think it was like a D3 school or something. I don't remember.
Okay, D3 school. Yeah, and the NWHL has had D3 players, so it's no reason to stop there. I mean, usually the D3 players come from Adrian, but yeah, D3 player. It's interesting because let's see. As far as the Adrian Bulldogs, let's go to them. Like they had Hannah McGowan played for the Buttes for the first couple years, and then like that one year, the Olympic year where you didn't have the Olympians, you had like the Adrian trio signed with Buffalo. That was Kristen Lewicki, Kaylin Shiroka, and Sarah Shurev, and that was supposed to be like a scoring, like a line of just those 3 players. And I think they had success with the Buttes that year because the Buttes went to the finals like they had always been going to the finals, and I think they lost by a goal to the Riveters. But so as far as D3 players coming out of Adrian, that has been it seems to have worked out. So it will again. We'll just have to see how it pans out. But it's interesting. Like it is interesting to think about. It's like you pretty much expect all D1 players to be drafted, and then you get somebody from D3. It's like wow. So if she was able to score a lot of goals, so we're just gonna have to see how she makes with the opportunity with the Whale,
Yeah, I'd say so. But yeah, her stats certainly jumped out at me. Now that you mentioned the whole Conway reference, it just kind of made me chuckle. I'm like, oh, that's right.
Yeah,
she got his namesake.
I mean, she probably gets that all the time, and I think Minnesota State Mankato had a Conway too. Her name might have been Erin Conway or something, but yeah, if you're a hockey player and you have the name Conway, it's like that. The first thing that everybody's gonna say is like, "Oh, Conway, yeah." So, of course, there is a player named Chelsea Goldberg. I don't know if she gets the Goldberg thing a lot, but he was like the goalie. He was kind of the comic relief. So Conway was like supposed to be like this main character, the star player. So yeah,
Yep, and then you already know what happened with Goldberg. He got his job usurped by Julia the Cat Gaffney. So.
Oh yeah, I just enjoyed how much of a prick he was in like the D3 movie where he's trying to sabotage Julie the Cat and like with like a platter of donuts or something. Like that guy was just like he was a jerk in that movie, man. It's just I
don't think that's not exactly a far cry from who he is in real life. I believe it's actor Sean Weiss. I don't know if you've like Googled him recently. He doesn't look too good. He looks very gaunt and emaciated. He had a couple of mug shots. I don't know what happened with that guy. He just fell flat. He just plummeted after his Mighty Ducks success. I guess like he's perpetuating stereotypes about child actors just struggling when they grow up and entering adulthood.
Right. Yeah, I mean, everybody's pretty much heard about his he hasn't been in movies for a while, so I was gonna say like off the screen scandals, but he hasn't really kind of in the same way like you refer to hockey players as their off the ice life or whatever. It's like, yeah, everybody kind of knows about his the things that he's been going through with I guess alcoholism or getting arrested, but hopefully, I don't know, I guess hopefully he'll be in that Disney Plus Mighty Ducks show if that still happens, like maybe that'll get him out of trouble. Who knows?
I wouldn't hold my breath on that. Doesn't sound like they're going to lean towards him for him to reprise his role. That's just a hunch of mine.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. But yeah, so sharing the same name as Mighty Ducks players is hopefully it benefits the players more than that. So then the next draft pick was Buffalo Buttes, and again, this is a player from Adrian, like we were just talking about. It is Kelly O'Sullivan, and she's a defenseman. And yeah, I don't know what her numbers were, but I guess if Adrian has worked out for Adrian signings have worked out for the Buffalo Buttes, then hopefully this will turn into something good.
Yep, 4 goals, 22 assists for Adrian last season. So, like I said, Buffalo, they need all the help they can get. So it makes sense they've been drafting nothing but goaltenders and defensemen. From what I recall, they only drafted one forward, and that was Autumn McDougall.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, just draft out wherever holes you need to fill. And it's not like the NHL draft where you might have to wait a few years for a defenseman to actually get on your team. These players are just going to be able to play for the team right away. So it's like you can really just approach this draft a lot differently than that. You can actually say, oh, I have a hole here. I have a hole in this part of my lineup, so I'm going to draft a player. I'm just going to draft a player in that position, and there's that. Hopefully it works out well. So then the next pick was Metropolitan Riveters picked Bridget Prentice, a forward, and Franklin Pierce, I think, is a D2 team, if I remember right. They're in the new, it's like the NEWHA, the New England Women's Hockey Association or Alliance. That has that has the new LIU team in there, and LIU, and I think Sacred Heart in that conference. I think they're a D1 team as well, but everybody else, including like Post University and Franklin Pierce, are all D2 teams. And if these D2 teams are playing in the same division as D1 teams, and I guess they can't be all that bad. I mean, they can't be too much lower than the D1 teams. I don't know if they think they can put them in the same division. So, but anyway, what have you seen what her numbers, like Bridget's numbers, looks like at Franklin Pierce? Is that something that can help the Riveters, like as far as having stats for a D2 team?
She had a solid year last year. Bridget had 19 goals and 26 assists in the 20-plus games she played last season. So pretty solid contributor.
Yeah, and again, it's Division 2, so I mean, I don't really how separated. I'm not sure how separated like Division 1 and 2 and 3 are. If you saw an exhibition game between D1 and D3, how much of a killing would it be? I have no idea, but if you put up good numbers for a D2 team, then that can't be all that bad. So, and again, like we talked about, Riveters, another team letting in a lot of goals, so it makes sense to draft defensemen and goalies. So, yeah, man, probably a good get by the Riveters then, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then Toronto picked Natalie Marcuzzi, another RMU player, a forward. And yeah, Toronto seems to have a history with RMU players. Like, I know I'm pretty sure Brittany Howard, if I remember right, she played for the Toronto Furies. So RMU, they just like these or Toronto just likes these RMU players, like whether it's the CWHL Toronto or the NWHL Toronto, it seems like.
Yeah, she had modest stats. She had 7 goals and 8 assists for RMU last year.
Yeah, and then that's a defenseman stat, so that's.
Yeah, and like she was she was primarily forward last year, so you can't really expect much there.
Oh yeah, what am I'm getting mixed up. Yeah, she was a forward, so I guess we'll see. Again, we have to look at that as maybe she'll run with the opportunity. And because like RMU, of course they've had good players like JC Gebhardt and Brittany Howard before, so we start to see how she complements the team. But obviously, you're not going to get all 30 goal scorers or whatever. So yeah, we'll see how it happens. But RMU, like I actually didn't see that one Lindenwood home game against RMU. I could have seen it, but I didn't because that was, ironically, that was the same weekend as the Pittsburgh joint training camp we were at last year. So, and the joint training camp was quite an interesting week. So I say I probably chose wisely as far as my offense. But yeah, otherwise, Lindenwood just happened to play RMU, and I didn't get to see that one. But RMU is usually pretty good. It's usually RMU and Mercyhurst that are doing well in the CHA. So I can't blame the team for picking RMU players or Mercyhurst. Although looking back in this draft, I don't think anybody from Mercyhurst got picked. So that's interesting. I'm just realizing that now, actually. But anyway, on to the next person, Haley Mack. So the Minnesota Whitecaps picked Haley Mack from Bemidji State. So this is the one pick that wasn't a Minnesota Gophers or Wisconsin Badgers pick. So as far as Bemidji State, how did her numbers look there?
She provided a balanced scoring attack last season for Bemidji State, 15 goals and 13 assists. So pretty even-keeled player. I'd say that's a pretty good, solid draft pick right there by the Whitecaps.
Nice, yes. So, and again, you think outside. It almost feels like thinking outside the box, because you think Minnesota is going to get all the Wisconsin and Gopher players, but it's cool to see that they picked somebody from one of the other 4 D1 Minnesota teams. I mean, there's, you got St. Cloud, you got UMD, you got Minnesota State Mankato, but yeah, they picked somebody from there, and that. I wouldn't be surprised if graduates from those other schools actually ended up signing with the Whitecaps, although they do have a powerhouse team now. But I don't know, I would feel like there'd still be a lot of pushing and shoving to get on the Whitecaps, even though with the PWHPA going on and all that. So we'll see. But yeah, it's refreshing to see some of them pick somebody from Bemidji. Bemidji's they're like D1, and I think all their other sports are like D2. And hockey is their one D1 sport, if I remember right. But anyway, so now the Boston Pride. So now they pick somebody from Clarkson with the next pick. It's Taylor Turnquist from Clarkson, and she's a defenseman. Yeah, again, Clarkson, they seem to be like the powerhouse team, or they're always the team that finds a way to win. So that's definitely a good get for the Boston Pride, and I can envision her signing with them. But
Yeah, she had 3 goals, 9 assists, and just judging from her Instagram post of the video, just acknowledging being drafted by the Pride, she seemed pretty excited. So
yeah,
hopefully she definitely does lean towards signing with the team eventually.
That's the thing. It's like when you see a player post a video about being drafted, that's always a good sign. And again, as we talked about, it seems like the team that seems like they're going to sign the most of their draft picks would be the Boston Pride. So yeah, I would not be shocked. It's almost kind of like the rich gets richer, man. Boston Pride picks they're already a powerhouse team. They pick these players and they definitely sign. And then you're not really sure about the Buttes, the Riveters, and the Whale. But I would hope things work out for those other teams because, you want to see a balanced league, a balanced competitive league. You don't want it to be like Women's Worlds all over again where USA and Canada are the only good teams. You don't want it to be just Boston and Minnesota. So, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that these teams will make some good signings if they can't sign their draft picks. So, and now we go to round 5, and of course we come up on my favorite draft pick of them all, and that's Nicole Guagliardo being picked by the Connecticut Whale, and she played for Adrian this past year, but the years before that she played for Mercyhurst, and then she played for Lindenwood. I think that was her junior year. So anybody that plays for me, seeing a Lindenwood player being drafted, that's a good thing. And I think I remember her doing well for Lindenwood that year, as far as Lindenwood stats are concerned. But how did she do for Adrian this year? Because I was kind of surprised she played for D1 teams and then she transferred to D3.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with Adrian players, but she had a solid year last year. 16 goals and 17 assists for Adrian last year.
Yeah, I mean, and again, with Lindenwood, I just go based on going to the games. It seemed like she was scoring the goals more than other players. And Lindenwood's star player, Taylor Gerard, was injured that year. And then the next year she transferred to Quinnipiac. So, I mean, yeah, I think Nicole Guagliardo has a good opportunity with the Whale this year. And as I talked about before, another Lindenwood player, Kendra Broad, played for the Whale last year, and she scored that overtime goal to get the Whale's first win. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm one of those guys thinking about buying a jersey, I'm going to buy somebody that has something to do with St. Louis. That's always my first thought. So, yeah. that's pretty exciting for me. And I actually saw her play for Lindenwood, so it's fun I saw her play, and then she gets drafted. As a player, I was cheering for her, and she gets drafted. So I hope she does good for the Whale. That's just the Lindenwood fan in me for sure. But yeah, so good deal with that. And then the Buffalo Buttes drafted Logan Land from RIT, and I recognize the name Logan Land. But how did she do for RIT? I'm not surprised. Like, I could see the Buttes, like they've signed RIT players before, so that makes sense. But what could Logan Land be for the Buttes? Like, did the Buttes land a good draft pick with Logan Land?
Love the puns there. She had a decent, obviously as a defenseman, you don't expect a offensive juggernaut, but she had 4 goals and 12 assists last season, so she got a good defensive player from a great school, Rochester Institute of Technology, so she's smart. Yeah, solid pick by the Buffalo Buttes. I mean, from what was left available on the draft board, yeah, I see nothing wrong with that draft selection right there for the Buttes.
Nice, yeah. And as we have continuously mentioned, if they let in a lot of goals last year, then get all the defensemen and goalies you can get, and see how it all plugs in. See how it plugs the holes that you had before. See how it fills the holes you had before, and then you can see if your team ends up being more of a complete team. So yeah, I hope she signs, and I hope that works out to where we can get some closer hockey games and not like any like blowouts. Not as many blowouts, of course. So Connecticut Whale then drafted Maddie Bishop, a forward from Sacred Heart, and I think Sacred Heart, like I said, I think they're D1. But they're within that division that has other D2 teams. So how did Maddie Bishop do for Sacred Heart?
She held her own. She had like a balanced scoring attack, 11 goals and 19 assists last season for the Sacred Heart School.
Nice. Awesome. And then of course, the Minnesota Whitecaps, they went right back to Wisconsin and drafted Maddie Rowe. And it seems like she played both forward and defense. I'm not sure, but either way, yeah. It's Maddie Rowe from Wisconsin, so.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that, her splitting time between forward and defenseman, if that contributed to her lacking scoring opportunities. She had only 2 goals and 3 assists last season.
Yeah, but I guess you know what they say. Like, I guess a player like that could be like a complete player who does it all. So maybe that's a good thing. But unlike Presley Norby, we don't know about Maddie Rowe, like if she's actually going to play for the Whitecaps or not. But I mean, it's hard to say. And they drafted her like all the way. They waited till the last round to draft her, but that's because they were drafting other players from the Gophers and all that stuff. So it's like, and again, we're drafting kind of based on geography. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with Wisconsin players last year, because since the PWHPA is already formed, it's like there's a chance they could sign this time, Mm-hmm. So you wonder about other Wisconsin players or Minnesota players that graduated but didn't enter into the draft. You just never know. But again, that's just the Whitecaps adding to their powerhouse. I kind of mixed those two words up. Anyway, and then Boston Pride get the last 2 picks. It was you got Megara McManus from UNH, and again, UNH is a team. I'm going to tell myself to pay more attention to them next year. But how did Megara's season go with UNH last year?
17 goals and 10 assists, solid,
yeah. And again, you're added to that Pride roster, so yeah, man. And then not only that, the Boston Pride again got to pick, and they picked Paige Capistran, defenseman from Northeastern, and she was the captain. She was like the Capitan. I'm not the one who made up that pun, by the way. So yeah, it seems like another good get for the Pride. It's just like the Pride are they're already a loaded team, and now they have had a loaded draft. It's like, man.
Yep. She contributed 0 goals and 11 assists last season for Northeastern University.
So she's getting them helpers, man. So yeah. I mean, the Pride are already going to have a lot of scores, so if she can keep putting up assists, that's going to work out well. It's like, man, I just feel like the Pride are going to be the favorites next year, because I have confidence that they're going to sign their player. I'm actually wearing the shirt right now. This is a Dena Lang shirt, by the way. This is the first NWHL shirt I ever ordered. So, but yeah, I feel like the Pride, I have confidence in them signing the most players, and I feel like they're going to be the favorites next year, but they're always a favorite anyway. Like they always have I always like to make the pun with Jillian Dempsey. Like they have a high density roster, so like they usually always do. So I mean, we'll see how it goes. I mean, right now we're looking at the Pride and the Whitecaps again, as far as who's going to be the powerhouse teams. But yeah, you never know. This is just a draft. There's going to be a lot more free agent signings after this. So so yeah, man. All right. So I mean, would you like? Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but yeah, does that sound better going back to the best of three format?
Absolutely, I think it'd be great. It'll prove that whichever team wins wasn't a fluke based on a single elimination game. It just outright determines who the better team is. I think it's more fair.
Yeah, and I just when you're talking about playoffs, like you want it to kind of be a series where the teams like spend time playing against each other for a while. So like best of three is fine for now, and like it's kind of weird. Like that very first year, the inaugural season, like the Connecticut Whale were like the best team that whole season, and then they played against the Buttes, and I think the Whale won the first playoff game, and then I don't remember if they won the first one, but they eventually lost the playoff series 2-1 to the Buttes, and it's like if it would have been the one game format like that subsequent years had been, the Whale would have went to the finals, But then, ironically, the Whale were the first team in history this year to beat the Buttes in a playoff game. As far as that, it was that play-in game, that kind of wild card game, if you will, to get to the playoffs. And it's like, so the Whale kind of made history in that way, beating the Buttes, not in a final game. So it's kind of interesting how that all worked. But yeah, I definitely hope they go back to the, best of three format, because it just makes sense, and even if they have to sacrifice some of those regular season games, like it's just better. So if they go back to that, I will be happy. And then I think that was pretty much all I had for this. I mean, I think this must have went on longer than I thought it was going to go, but it's just we were pretty much just keeping it simple, talking about the draft picks. So yeah, I'll look what it looks like in the editing and all that. But yeah, it's again, it's good to have news in the time of. Not only is it summertime, but it's just, the coronavirus time. So it's good to have something to talk about. And again, I liked how they handled the draft as far as having, all these different people, like whether it was an NHL player or a broadcaster or like the head of the Black Girl Hockey Club, introduced the Sorora Tinker Black draft pick. So that's stuff like that is always good. And they even had some fans introduce draft picks too. So it's like, yeah, I'd say they took all these kind of different people of different organizations or even just fans, and just had them introduce draft picks. I thought it was pretty cool. So again, like I kind of think a lot of it is just good for a PR's perspective, and to me that's fine. I'm glad it's not the way it was the first couple of years where it's just like they drafted a play. Boston Pride drafted Sarah Nurse. It's like Sarah Nurse is probably like, oh, I've been drafted. Cool. I'm glad they kind of like made it a little more legitimate in that sense, where a player has to register and then the player will like make a tweet or make a message about how she's excited to play for the team. So yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good to see, and I hope a lot of free agent signings follow after this. Now that the draft has been completed,
Absolutely. Like you said, it definitely gives more legitimacy to the whole drafting process, and we get to see a bunch of new faces come into the league. And if I'll be honest with you, if the Boston Pride end up signing the likes of Delaney Balinskis and Teresa Vansova, I'll definitely renew my season tickets. I mean, I was only a season ticket holder for seasons 2 and 3 for the NWHL season due to my current scheduling. But yeah, if they are able to sign those remaining 2 players, top-notch players, yeah, no problem. I'll definitely become a season ticket holder again. I'm pretty excited about the upcoming season.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just like, yeah, you just want all the positives to come out of like the PWHPA and the NWHL. Like, you want the PWHPA to make strides and innovations, and then you want the NWHL, like, even though they don't have the Olympic players, you hope that you want to see that, that the women's hockey talent pool is bigger than just the Olympic players. You want to see a lot of talented players hopefully sign with the NWHL as well. And then especially with the new Toronto team, I'll admit, like, it was harder to watch the NWHL this year, not just because of my scheduling, but, it's also like it's like they don't have the Olympians this year and all that stuff. So, but the new Toronto team and these draft picks have piqued my interest. And of course, there was they made that deal with Twitch this past year. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to follow it more this year, and then by this time next year, I'll be able to say more about the player stats and what more I know about the the players, because a lot of these players I was lost on and didn't know too much about a lot of them, and some I did. So yeah, hopefully all the positives can come out of these different organizations, the PWHP and the NWHL. Hopefully as many positives can come out as possible. So we'll see what kind of strides they end up making this year.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Oh yeah. Well, cool, man. I guess that's all I got for now. So we will we'll try to think of a topic for next time.
All right, man. Be safe, man. All right. Enjoy the rest of your week, okay?
All right. You as well, Mr. Billy Ng, or Mr. Billy Ing.
Later, Brandon.
See you around.